Hi, in this video, I want to share with you some of the strategies we've been using helping SAP consulting companies get more clients and building their business development strategies. We typically worked with small founders converting from being a consultant to starting their own IT consulting company. And we typically work with clients who are based in Europe, particularly in Germany, Poland, France, and Spain. So this is where we have the most know-how. So here are the few things I've observed that work when you're about to build an SAP consulting business. First thing is picking your niche. So you need to understand where you stand on the market. There are big SAP consulting companies that can offer a lot of different things, and you need to understand where you stand. And typically, you need to bring some value to the table. And oftentimes, you're going to be working, and this is very normal in SAP from what I've seen, with other consultancies who then are also working for another consultancy. So this is kind of like this pyramid of outsourcing, getting all the way to you. But what they're typically looking for in this pyramid of outsourcing is some very specific skills. So how do you get specific? Well, you want to specialize either within technology or within industry or both, like, for example, within retail module. Now, there are going to be three types of clients that you can be targeting simultaneously. So the first type of clients is going to be, like I mentioned already, other consultancies. And like I said, this is standard practice in SAP industry, or seems to be standard practice because I see everybody doing that. And these are important for you because they're going to keep the lights on for you, meaning that you'll get projects more easily, you will make smaller margins, you will basically make less money, but you will get some projects and you will be able to start enrolling some people to start working with you, and you will be able to learn how to run such a company. The second type of clients you probably going to be going after, and that's what our clients do, is getting mid-sized companies. So the advantage to those companies, from what I've observed, seems to be that they're more open to smaller consultancies like yours, versus enterprises might be less open to it, but also they might even have certain rules in procurement basically prohibiting them from working with tiny players. So it's going to be easier for you to really get them as a client, but also what you can do is you can leverage your enterprise experience. So a lot of consultants, they have been working on, I call it, like fancy projects, as in you can throw brand names out there. Like you've been working for this Fortune 500 company or that Fortune 500 company, and this is somewhat your branding. Now, a little caveat here, something you need to keep in mind that I'll be talking about later on, but you need to understand that there's going to be branding that you have as a consultant and branding and also positioning that you have as a company. So I'll talk about it in just a second. But coming back to mid-sized companies, you want to use your personal brand, who you've worked with, and leverage that as, hey, I know how those companies work. I can also help you now. And as you're getting those mid-sized companies, you're going to be building your company's brand. And that's important because now you're no longer contracted as a consultant to another company. Now you're contracted directly as the supplier to that mid-sized company. Obviously, with SAP, that's not going to be tiny companies, because tiny companies do not have SAP at all. But those are going to be as small as possible companies that actually have SAP, that will be the easiest for you to get to, are mid-sized companies. And then you start building your case study. So now at this point, you have some anchor clients that generate revenue for you, like other consultancies. So it helps you keep the lights on. And you start getting some smaller companies, mid-sized companies, who are helping you develop case studies that will put you in that positive feedback loop of having references as a company, not as an individual. And then the third type of clients that you can go after, that you'll be going after, is going to be enterprise companies. Now, I talked about procurement limitations. High entry barriers are obvious, even despite your personal experience with them or personal network. Now, if you do this for some time and you're converting you being a consultant to running a consulting company, over the time, they will pull you in somehow or through another entity. But what you want to do is you just want to understand that this might take some time. And what you want to do is you want to leverage your network as much as possible to help you do that. But you need to establish certain positioning that you have. You need to establish clear communication on what you specialize in. And this is not going to be hard. Like, people overthink that. But what I have seen working the best is simply just the thing that you already do. Obviously, you want to connect it with typical things that you can think of when you're working on your positioning. Like, for example, what does the market demand? Where is SAP going in general? And things like that. And if you're in the industry, you understand what things are happening, about, as for HANA, cloud, things like that. But you also want to stick to your core thing that you're the best at, that you've developed your brand and connected with those things. So I'm not in a position to tell you what's going to be the best niche and the brand to build, but typically what I have seen is that it's something very connected to what you already do. So now you're working on getting those three types of clients. And in order to accelerate your efforts to get those clients faster, you actually can take some action there as well. So what you can do is you can, first of all, like I mentioned, use your personal network, but you can also do this in the combination of using LinkedIn outreach, branding on LinkedIn, and webinars. So basically, what I have seen working is establishing very clear positioning on LinkedIn. I'm talking about creating your profile, specifying in the profile banner what you focus on, focusing on listing the experience and highlighting the areas that are connected to the thing that you're talking about, and running regular LinkedIn outreach using Sales Navigator and asking people who are the end target client for you within the target industry, within the target country, whether they can connect you with the person who's responsible for SAP. And another thing you can do, and that's going to be a very indirect way of selling for you, but what you can do is you can host live webinars. So once a month, you are hosting webinars and you are basically sending a message to everybody that's already in your network that you've added before through LinkedIn outreach. And you're just basically circling back every month and just asking them, hey, would you like to join the webinar? I'm hosting a webinar about this topic, which is something about, thing you do within SAP. And you have a couple of good things here. First of all, normally LinkedIn outreach has a limitation of 400 connection requests per week. Now with that, you don't really have a limitation. So you can invite pretty much everybody in that bucket of people who are within your target audience. And by the way, you can create those buckets on LinkedIn. So you do that and you touch point with them. And you need a lot of touch points to generate clients for SAP, for anything in general, but especially for SAP, because it is one of the, it's on the higher end of entry barriers to what other services I've seen out there. So you want to create a lot of touch points. I'm not going to get into data of how many of them you need, but you need a lot of touch points. So that's completely fine and normal to just create those touch points every month, circling back, sharing something new, posting on LinkedIn, inviting people to webinars. And then who will come to those webinars is not necessarily going to be your end client. So what you want to think of is, you want to imagine kind of like multi-threading in sales or buying center. You want to imagine the circle of different people that can basically get you to the right decision makers. You might not get, like platform manager, CDO, or somebody right away, but there might be somebody from the company joining your webinar about a specific topic that's exciting, that's interesting to you, that's something new within the industry that you figured out within your niche. And they might become a spark buyer. This happens oftentimes on our webinars that we're hosting as well, where somebody from the company is joining our webinar and then they think it's cool and they think that they've learned a lot. And they tell somebody in the company they work at, somebody above them, that, hey, you got to check this out. You got to talk with them. So oftentimes we get somebody coming to us, somebody telling us that, well, we do something else, right? We do business development consulting for IT consulting companies, but we would have somebody who's not necessarily a decision maker getting on a call with us, talking with us, and then inviting the actual decision maker to the second call. Now, in SAP, from what we've seen, and you might know that by now, the sales cycle is going to be way longer, but the same principles apply. You might get a spark buyer that pushes you in front of somebody else, like end user, who's pushing you in front of the secondary decision maker, who's pushing in front of primary decision maker, etc., etc. And while doing that, you will get into this positive feedback loop of leveraging your personal brand and essentially kind of making things work for you in the background. Because now what's happening is you're talking with other consultancies, mid-sized companies, enterprises. You talk with your network. People somehow start talking about you. People sometimes, when you talk with them and meet them in person, they might go and check you out on LinkedIn, and sometimes they would even message you to ask you about the project. I hope this is helpful. If you need help with business development, you can message me on LinkedIn. Thanks for checking this video. And by the way, I published recently a video about the positioning. So if you like to dive deeper into how to position yourself on the market, then definitely check this out. It's linked in the description. It's going to help you position your SAP consultancy.